Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Legendarium podcast. This is episode number 300 and the end of the First Law trilogy. That's the number of this episode. I am Craig, your host. Over there, they are Ryan and Ken. They are, they're dumb. And by the standard rules of whatever, if you're
did you injure yourself? Like, that welcome was really hard on the head. Like, I feel like you smacked your brain against the front. Like, welcome, and then nothing's working there.
Nothing's working. Yeah, no. You guys, back to the mud with you.
Okay.
That's dumb backwards. Back to the mud with you.
Never seen somebody concuss themselves on a head nod before.
No, I gotta say, it should come as no surprise to anybody that I am relieved. This is our last episode on the First Law trilogy. Mm-hmm. I have thoughts just on that particular point, but before I get there, of course, go to thelegendarium.com, which is where you can find links to previous episodes, to the Discord server where you can join in the conversation, and to the calendar to tell you what's coming up, what we're going to be reading next. Speaking of which, if you have not yet done so, please go to our GoFundMe page. You can find that actually on Discord. If you go to the announcements section there, there's a GoFundMe page where people can vote with their wallets on what we will read next. Right now, I think, I think Redwall is actually winning at the moment. But I'll have to go double check what the votes are. But, it could be fun. We're going to go from Joe Abercrombie to kids content, which is super appropriate. Yep. Should be great. So thelegendarium.com. Ryan and Ken, how you guys doing? You all right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, even after this, Ken, you all right?
I feel like I need a cigarette.
Okay, all right.
That's a lot of action in one day, I'm just saying.
Wow. Okay, all right. Ken coming in hot.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly where to start other than a Ken recap. No, I was looking at some of the Discord comments. I'll save them. You know what? I'll save them. We have some Discord comments. I think they're going to shepherd us through much of this discussion. But Ken, I'm going to kick it to you first, and then Ryan, you're coming up right after that. So Ken, recap us, baby.
I'm so excited. Say one thing for Joe Abercrombie. Say he doesn't believe in the slow burn.
What? Wait, what?
Okay, well...
Wait, okay. What?
Well, we all knew that the huge Feared versus Bloody Nine fight was a matter of when, not if. I mean, they mentioned it, so of course it was happening. And apparently, waiting until the end of the book is for chumps and suckers because it takes 4 chapters to get into it. No build up there. Turns out that the fight and all that the Bethod stuff was just build up for the rest of part 2. And it really is everything that we could have hoped for. An hour and 16 minutes, if you were listening on audio, an hour and 16 minutes of incredible carnage, culminating in, of course, the Bloody Nine emerging triumphant, Bethod's witch split in twain. I love saying the word twain. And Bethod himself rather unceremoniously at the bottom of a wall. And then we still had to finish the book. I feel like I was done at that point, if you know what I mean. But
Ken, you've got problems.
Yeah, well,
you need to learn. Like, for somebody who's so afraid to say the word sex.
I love sex.
Okay, all right, go on with your.
All right then,
just go on.
Let us continue. But where were we? Oh yeah,
it's good to get that part out of the way because there are Gurkish at the gates and ready to lay siege, and the giant, overwhelming gunpowdery. Eatery fury.
Okay, all right. Let's leave this to the professionals. Okay, Ken, take it from where Ryan started.
All right, it's good to get that out of the way too, Ryan, because we are at the gates where there are also Gurkish, and they're ready to lay siege in a giant, overwhelming, gunpowdery eatery fury, preferably before High Marshal West and Logan's barbarian horde can get there. Seriously, there's so much stuff that happens in part 2 that we just move right on to the lightning round. Logan leaves Black Dow.
The lightning round. Nice.
Or, Bullet Point Alley. I don't know what you want to call it. But Logan leaves Black Dow in charge in the north to track down Bethod's stragglers, which has predictably backstabby results. Pharaoh takes a pause from her vengeance tour to follow Baez into the House of the Maker, where she conveniently finds the seed. I have thoughts. And I lost my place. Oh, yeah. And Baez's old girlfriend who stole Malika's Kwai's face 2 books ago. Baez uses the seed to break the first law, hold off the eaters by laying waste to the city, and puppet master pretty much every other major event from the first 3 books. Turns out Baez really is kind of a dick. Who saw that coming? Except all of us.
Yeah, hand raises.
Yeah. King Giselle is learning, growing, finding there's more to life than just playing cards, drinking, and trying to get with every skirt that walks by, or as I like to call it, thinking with your Baez. And how about Artie and Glockta getting their storybook ending, yay, while obscuring the fact that Artie is carrying the king's bastard, apples and trees, as it were. And to sum up, King Giselle is happy that he's finally getting some action. Glockta is in the king of the world of sorts. Logan's rule lasted about 5 minutes. Pharaoh's ready to lay waste with her new seed demon powers. Column West may not make it, and Baez is a duck. Well,
Baez is a duck?
I actually misspelled that.
He's a duck. Yeah, okay, because he floats. There, he's a witch.
There you go.
He's a witch.
There you go. He is a witch. We should burn him. Who's breaking all the rules and pulling all the strings? Questions. What's the next book? How much time passes between? And is Logan still alive? And say this for the Legendarium. Say we're a podcast.
I at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Kenn, that was admirable because
that was a lot.
Say this for part 2 of what was this book called? Last Argument of Kings. Say that it was a lot.
Yep. Much. It was much.
There was a lot going on. So I mentioned there's a lot of Discord comments to get through. There are a fair few. I mean, we've had more, but I don't know if we've had more that I don't know if it's going to take as long in any previous episode as it will today to get through what we've got, if that makes any sense. So Combat Wombat, who, wow, been a while.
Yeah.
Wombat, nice to hear from you, says, just excited for you to tell us it usurped Lord of the Rings as your favorite series. Well, you are in luck because it did not. No, it's okay. No, let's move on. It's a funny comment, and I think that's all it was meant to be. Chesky says it's the destination. Oh, sorry, is the destination worth the journey? How many twists did you predict? Also, talk about the epilogue where all our characters ended up. We'll leave the epilogue, I think. But as far as the destination being worth the journey, this is worth a discussion. Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I want to kick it to you because my question for you is, what did you assume would be our reactions, Kenn and myself? Okay, so to table set a little bit again for anybody who hasn't listened or has only listened with half an ear, you've read through this now 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
And this is our first time, so you knew what was coming, and
mm-hmm.
and as a result, in our previous episodes, you've had things to say, but you've been uncharacteristically tight-lipped through this particular podcast series.
Yes.
And now we get to turn you loose. So let me ask that as my first question. What did you think would be the result for Kenn and myself?
The result, honestly, my expectation and my hope are not necessarily the same thing, but I thought there would be, I was hoping that there would be, you finish the book, you get all the pieces in place, you see the large picture that's been painted from book 1 all the way through, realizing, what Baez has been doing from the very beginning. You kind of see, Giselle's arc. Like if you look at each character's arc from book 1 to the end of book 3, you look at it that there's a lot there, and that it's actually pretty well, I feel like it's pretty well done when you look at it from the end perspective. You look at the very end of it and back oh yeah, I see all the steps that were laid out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that you would see that and go, okay, I get it. I understand why this is liked as much as it is. The further we got in, the more I felt like that became less likely to happen because the frustrations and the
vehemence.
It's just this is. I know the end. There's a lot of reveals in the end that are a lot of twists and turns that are really well done, that kind of pay off a lot of things that are really good. But I don't know if it's enough to turn the feelings that they've had on their path through this so far. I was actually quite pleased to hear Kenn's recap and that book 3 kind of gave you a little bit more of what you were looking for in throughout the series as a whole. And I think that's, for me, I feel like you probably enjoyed finishing this book off a little bit more. I'm sure you finished, your relief might be a little more just being done than actually
going through the finishing.
Going through it there.
I may have enjoyed the journey. Craig enjoyed the destination. He's like, we're done.
Did I?
Done. Yes, you enjoyed being done. You're like, I don't have to take that. I don't have to take that road again.
Yeah. So that was I would say if I had any assumptions, that it would be that you would understand more so the appreciation and why this series tends to sit where it is once you got the full picture completed.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that's about where it's at. I don't think that necessarily you're going to turn around and love it, especially knowing where we were on the pathway up to this point. But I still think that there might be an odd moment a year from now or so where you go, yeah, wait a minute, that was okay. That was
better than I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if it were for my part, Ken, I'll let you have your say in just a moment. But for my part, it was, how should I put this? If we had gone through the first 2 books, or the first 2.5 books really, and my frustrations were all, oh gosh, I just don't get it. I don't understand what's happening. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what the mystery is. Those frustrations were there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my frustration with the series through the first 2.5 books was kind of fundamental and ideological, and not just a matter of, how are these puzzle pieces all going to fit together? It was a real feeling of distress when it came to that ideological nature of the book.
Yes.
And so when the end of the book came, there were parts of it that were those puzzle piece things that kind of fell into place, many of which worked, some of which did not for me. But on that ideological level, it kind of got even more troubling for me than it was originally. And so, yeah, I had issues. Shall we just start there? I had issues, and I don't know where to start with them. I have a lot. At a certain point in this episode, you guys have got to just say the word, "Hey, Craig, anti-Semitism," and I'll be off to the races. Okay, so anyway, but we'll save that for now. Ken, what about you? How with all this stuff?
I felt like the payoff. I could see why you and a lot of listeners are saying it's really like 3 books. You know, a 3-book roadmap that pays off at the end of book 3, which was frustrating when you're trying to get through books 1 and 2 because you want payoff, you want resolution, and I felt like I got very little, and that was irritating, almost irritating enough that if I didn't have to, I might not have gone back to book 3. But I'm glad I did. I will say that, and I thought part 2 of book 3 was fantastic in the sense that action just kept coming. You know, it's all. Everything that was building up for the first 2.5 parts is finally paying off. 2.5 books, anyway.
Yeah.
Is finally paying off. And the other thing I liked was Abercrombie does a very good job of putting those little clues in for you, but not in such a way that all of the twists are like out of left field. Like there were a lot of things that we saw coming.
Yeah.
Like we called early, I think Baez might be, might be a bad guy. I think something happened to Malachus Kwai. I think that we called a whole bunch of stuff that actually paid off, which I liked because I don't mind that we even saw the breadcrumbs at the time, but they weren't so in your face blatant, like here's a breadcrumb,
Yeah.
But then they paid off in the right way and not in some sort of left field resolution that you never saw coming and doesn't make any sense. These actually make sense. And it almost makes me want to go, maybe not immediately, but I wouldn't mind going back and going, let's see how I saw these.
Let me ask you a question, Ken.
Okay.
They make sense. All the breadcrumb things and the Baez machinations and all this. Hey, machinations. But would it have how should I put this? The Baez stuff especially was revealed to us as an epilogue with Baez saying, "Here are all the strings I pulled, suckers. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Instead of being kind of weaved into the story itself, it's revealed by Baez telling, I think it's Galacta. I think he's telling Galacta, "Oh yeah, no, here's
both between here. He has two conversations, one with Galacta, one with Giselle.
One with Giselle.
There you go. There you go. You know, you're all suckers. I'm the puppet master. F you. I'm out. Mic drop." And he leaves.
Right.
Instead of, it just felt it felt at the end of a story the way people complain about info dumps at the beginning of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, so when I said at the beginning that there were some things that I felt satisfied by and other things that I didn't, this was one where I didn't, where I'm hearing Baez talk about all this stuff and I'm like, really? Here? This is where we're learning about all the, okay, all right. I didn't buy into it. I didn't love it. I just wasn't into it.
I feel like the change was abrupt. Absolutely. But I feel like a lot of those strings were built up. A lot of the things that he told us were things that we kind of saw coming. Like for example, the Giselle's turning back the uprising from the Tanner. That we knew that was contrived. I mean, it was just it was over too easily. It's like, okay, that was fake for some reason. And him finding Giselle, that was fake, or that was staged for some reason. We didn't know exactly how devious and what a bad guy Baez was at the time, but we knew that he was manipulating things to that level at the time. And did we know that he had orchestrated with Bethod to get Logen there? Or was that,
no, he reveals that to Logen in part 2.
Yeah, in part 2.
The stuff with Giselle is very clear by the end of part 1.
Yeah.
That there's no mystery there. So,
right.
Yeah.
But I feel like there were a few other things, and all of the stuff with Juvens and Canadius and all these other magi that we can never remember the names of and stuff. It was clear throughout the entire trilogy that there are bigger things that he's doing, and he's been around for a long time. And I question that it's even clear that he can be killed, at this point. But I'm sure there's a way that he can, and I bet it involves Pharaoh and the seed somehow. But
Ken, I've got another question for you.
All right.
And by I mean Jesse L has another question for both of us, really. And that is, did you like it better than the Farseer trilogy?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember pretty much anything about the Farseer trilogy.
Fair enough.
And this I actually felt invested in.
Okay.
So I would go back and read that again. I feel like we primarily
read what again?
The Farseer trilogy.
Okay.
I feel like we, when I say we, I mean Kyle and I probably gave it an unfair shake.
Hey,
but
no. I'm actually going to push back against that and just say that Kyle hated it.
Yeah.
And that's totally fair because frankly, I hated this, and but having hated it, I don't begrudge anybody else liking it.
No, and I don't either. So that's not what I'm saying.
And I feel like I've given it a really fair shot. Now there are going to be, First Law fans out there who are saying no, you didn't, because I didn't end up liking it. But I gave it a really fair shot. I tried. I honestly tried really hard to like it. But I enjoyed the ending of Farseer more than this one. And this isn't a Farseer review, so we're not going to get back into that. But by the time I got to the end of book 3 of Farseer, I had more respect for what she was doing. Yeah. Well, that's not to say I don't have any respect here. Believe me, we can talk about that sort of thing. But I guess maybe respect isn't the right word. I had more enjoyment out of the end of Farseer than I did here. So
I think by the end of Farseer, I was just trying to be done with it, and so I didn't.
Well, that
I might
sounds
not have
familiar.
Given it, yeah, I know. But I might not have given it the shake it deserves, and I wouldn't mind going back to it sometime and giving it a second shot. You know?
No, my only quibble was with your use of the word fair. Yeah. Like you and I think tried both to give both of these series a fair shake, and I didn't like this one. You didn't like Farseer. That's fair. Yeah. So
and I respect anybody who likes what they like, and that's fine. Like what you like.
I will say this: I would love In fact, after the end of both of these series, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with both of these authors, either of these authors, and try to understand where they were coming from, what they were trying to communicate, where I may have missed, where they may have missed for me, or whatever. Like, that conversation could be great.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I have to love the book.
No,
So
I don't think so. But I ended up enjoying this one.
yeah.
Probably more than I expected to. But
What about you, Ryan? Farseer versus this?
I would take the series over Farseer as of right now. Like I said, I do feel I need to reread Farseer.
Yeah, no, same for sure.
But I would easily take this series over that one as of right now.
Yeah. Okay. Ken, Murph, 1976, would like to know, what did you think of Logan's story arc, specifically Logan's?
Loved Logan's story arc.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay.
and I'll tell you why, because, I said this, I think I said it in the first book. His entire character was tailor-made for me. It really was. He's a barbarian. He's a simpleton. He's really much more insightful than that. But
a simple man doesn't have to mean a simpleton.
no, exactly.
Right.
But I loved all of his little sayings from his dad. I loved all of the, say one thing for Logan, 9 fingers. I loved all of that. I loved the Berserker Fury, and I love the fact that he's trying to be a better person throughout the entire thing. He's like, I'm really kind of done with this killing thing. I'd like to be a better person. And then at the end, he's like, I guess this is my life. And so he goes back to it. And the fact that he's still alive,
Okay.
I love that at the end. But
Question.
Yes.
Question.
Does
Logan understand the whole spirits inhabiting him and creating Logan, the Bloody Nine? Like, does he understand the dichotomy? Or does he just believe that is literally him?
I'm not sure. I felt like he understood that he was two people, or that when the Bloody Nine takes over, that it's not him in control. But there were some things that he said at the end here to Dogman and stuff that made me think maybe he doesn't understand that when he loses control, he doesn't have it.
That, I think what you are questioning here is actually the crux of Logan's story arc.
Right.
Is he is trying to be a better man. He's trying to deal with this.
But
he has another
cannot
because there is another person who inhabits him. So anytime he becomes the Bloody Nine, he doesn't have clear recollection of what happened. So he knows that when something else takes over, it's not him, but he can't separate himself being like, that's somebody else, because it's still physically me.
Right.
It's still my body. It's somebody who's like, these people look at me and they see me, they see their friend in air quotes. How many the times that I can't remember,
like when he almost killed Dogman.
Well, yeah,
he almost kills Dogman.
When he kills Thunderhead, he kills the little boy.
Yeah.
People see him do it. And I love, by the way, remember when I asked in the last episode if there's going to be some comeuppance for that? And Crummock is like, I know it was you.
Oh, yeah.
Don't come back here.
I loved that scene.
I loved that scene.
That was a great scene.
Holy cow. But anyway, sorry.
No, you're good.
I think that the Mr. Hyde part, though, does recognize when he takes over, because when the Gurkish light off the gunpowder and he gets hit in the head, I think there was if I'm recalling it correctly, there's a moment where the Bloody Nine says, crap, or something to that effect, and Logan takes back over.
Yeah, there is, and it happens, I think it's again when in the Dogman sequence where he's, the Bloody Nine gets upset because he realizes Logan is about to take back over. He realizes that Logan can regain control in that moment, and he's not able to just kill whoever he wants. I'll say this as well. If you really like Logan and his story arcs, Logan is in the standalone novels. They follow, if I've heard correctly and read correctly, the standalone books follow Logan's journey.
Okay.
Out the window and beyond there. So
the next one is because I asked this earlier.
Spear.
The
spear cuts through water.
Something circle something.
I can't remember what the standalones are.
Somebody said those words on Discord, and I just wondered if that was a novella.
Yeah. Well, you asked about how far down the next trilogy is, and kind of that. I think it's roughly 20-ish years down the road, a little bit.
It follows Shivers, right?
We're not going to talk about who it follows
versus
and
everything,
doesn't, okay?
but-
Because that's a spoiler. So,
How's that a spoiler?
we're just not going to do it.
Okay.
So anyway.
I think I want to read further. That's my point. And yes, I love Logan,
Okay. All right.
but only in a strictly platonic way.
I have questions about the Logan storyline because his arc in a normal novel, and I get, okay, these are literally written in conversation with, if not outright opposition to, other novels. But in a regular story, his arc is, hey, there's this inner demon within me and I'm trying to conquer it and I have a tough time with that. And, and by the end of the series, he either does or he doesn't conquer that inner demon.
Yeah.
But here in this story, it's, hey, try all you want. F you. You're never going to change.
You're never getting rid of me.
There's a literal, actual demon within you who takes over. And there's some nuance there. Obviously, Logan has to get to a state. He has to be in a position to where that demon within does take over, right? So you could argue, well, hey, don't put yourself in those situations, and that won't. Yeah. But then you get into the, hey, just don't walk down that alleyway. Victim blame, So I'm troubled even by the nuance that you could bring to his storyline. I guess it kind of gets to my my troubles with if you guys were Ryan, was it you who hated all the like devs and Annihilation and all those? Anyway, with devs, like the whole
none
idea
of them resonated with me. I won't say I hated any of them, but none of them resonated with me.
Anyway, the whole idea behind something like devs is you literally have no choice. You are on a tram ride through fate and just, grip it and enjoy the ride. I reject that. And so I'm very uncomfortable with Logan's storyline in that way. That being said, he does have some of the best moments. He has some of the best pearls of wisdom, some of the best action scenes. Like, Logan's storyline is definitely the most most satisfying out of the storylines generally. But still, I have issues. Right? Oh, sorry, Ken.
Can I share my one last favorite Loganism?
Sure.
Right at the beginning of part 2, when they're talking about how he's going to fight the Feared and all that, and what's the deal with the Feared? And she's talking about how whatever the demon's name is, Glostrod, wrote on the left half of his body, and it's indestructible. And he says, "Why didn't you write on both sides?"
Yeah,
that's Logan in a nutshell. He's just like, pragmatism says, "Why didn't you just write on both sides and call it good?" Well, that would have made sense, but and there's no answer to it. He passes it off, and everything keeps going. I laughed at that moment.
It was, I will say, it was some great writing in the duel between those two.
Yeah.
When it finally gets to the end of it, and Logan stabs the Feared through his tattooed side, and then just keeps working the blade until it gets to the other tattooed side, and the distress and death that causes. It was a great. It's one of those times when you know exactly what's going to happen. There's only one way that this could end, other than Logan getting stomped into the dirt, and that being Abercrombie's point. Right. But if he's going to win, this is how he's going to win, and it was written so well that I just loved it anyway. It doesn't matter how predictable it is. That was great. So, yeah. Ryan, it looked like you had something you wanted to say, or should we move on?
I don't know what there is something that's on my mind a little bit that I would be curious. I didn't prepare enough to really go deep into this, but I'm curious. Abercrombie frequently is kind of referred to as the
British.
Well, yes, he is frequently referred to as British because that is an accurate fact about the man. But I see in a lot of writings and messagings about him that he's not anti-Tolkien, but he is the anti-Tolkien in the way that he writes.
Sure. And now I get what you're saying.
And I'm curious what elements, like I said, what elements of the story are things, like, because you talk a lot about having there are aspects of of the writing that it's not necessarily the technical elements, though there might be some there. It's the tone, the ideas of the
the ideology,
behind it.
Yeah,
being so contrary to what you love, that's why it doesn't resonate with you. Like, I don't know where to take this exactly, but it's a thought that is just sitting on my head. Like, is it? Yeah, I don't know where to take that.
No, I think that's okay. And I wish I had a great 2,000 word essay to just pull out and read to you right now. I haven't prepared that. Maybe someday I will. But yeah, it's a great 30,000 foot view question. Okay, so all right, everybody take a deep breath. We're zooming out.
Professor Craig putting on his jacket.
No, I'm not going to put on my jacket. That's my point. Is I don't. My jacket is not prepared for this moment. Because to pull back the curtain a little bit, I just finished the book today, so I haven't prepared a bunch of deep thoughts or anything like that. That's part of what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Is us just kind of giving our thoughts off the cuff in a way, except for Kenn's recap, of course.
That's right.
But 30,000 foot view, it's anti-Tolkien in that every character exists. Like, if you put every character in a story on the fence, and then they come, the fence is their path through life or whatever. They come along a decision point. Where are they going to fall? And then what are the consequences of their decision of where they're going to go? And Tolkien's vision for his story is, as a rule, again, with nuance. And if you don't think that there's nuance in Tolkien, then go back and read Tolkien better. But as a rule, he says, look, there are such things as good and evil. Mm-hmm. And characters can choose good or evil. And while there may be immediate consequences that seem randomized, that seem, not to track perfectly with their decisions, ultimately, God, providence, whatever you want to call it, Tolkien would have called it God, of course. But in the long run, making the right decision will be for the good. Mm-hmm. Abercrombie takes that and says, hey, you can make whatever decision you want, and sometimes it'll work out okay. Usually it won't. And ultimately, F you, the Jews control everything. That's what Abercrombie is saying.
Wow.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. But I did have some real issues with... I feel like I need to bleep that out so that nobody takes it out of context and puts it on social media.
Hey, Craig.
What?
Anti-Semitism.
Here we go!
Yes!
I had some issues. Okay.
I'm very curious about this, quite honestly.
Too. I wasn't even kidding. I want to hear about this now.
No, I had issues because it's a long-standing, and by long-standing I mean centuries, nigh upon millennia old trope that go look through Jewish history in Europe especially, but in European history the Jews control both money and commerce because those are considered lesser professions. So you're above serfdom, you're not tied to the land because, you're, here's another phrase for you, a rootless cosmopolitan, right? But it's complicated. I'm really only skimming the surface here, but people can look more into it. But basically in medieval European history, the nobility considered, because of their Christianity, they considered usury or money lending a crime, a sin. But hey, Jews are damned anyway, so let them do it because they recognized that it was economically necessary.
Yep.
And so they would make the Jews do it, or let the Jews do it, so to speak. And then condemn them for it and say, look at these horrible, horrible people. And this is part of anti-Semitism in Europe. And this is a very European story. right? This First Law trilogy. And so it's kind of, and I should also mention that this is carried through into our era. It just as a manifestation, or I should say that many of our anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are modern iterations of that medieval anti-Semitism, right? The Jews control everything, the banks, the money lenders, the whatever. And so to get to the end of this story and find out that Baez is the puppet master that controls everything through the bank and through commerce and through money lending, it felt very anti-Semitic to me, intentionally or not.
Okay.
It felt very, conspiracy theorist-y. He ended lamely. Like I said, there's an essay in here somewhere, and I haven't written it yet. But these thoughts are all whirling around in my mind, and I'm a little troubled by it. Mm-hmm. That as you're reading through a story like this, it's most stories like this are either the world as the author wants it to be, or the world as the author believes that it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a story like this is so cynical, so pessimistic, that I have to think that this is the story, or that this is the world as Joe Abercrombie thinks it is. And I'm troubled by the possible anti-Semitic tropes within it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, the logic, your point A to point B, everything there, I understand, makes sense. I never connected those dots. That is not my reading comprehension level all there. The idea that, because in Baez's final discussion, I think it is with Glock, where he talks about, and Glock is like, am I in the presence of Master Valent or Master Bulk?
And he says both.
And he's like, and he goes through and talks about it, and that the banks are where the power is. Like the idea that money is where the power is. Like, this is a concept I didn't really tie to, anti-Semitism or Judaism, but that concept, money being power and I control the banks and everything, that makes sense to me. And I'm
okay. So to back up, I can say that it is at the very least kind of conspiracy theory-ish.
Yeah.
Now it's another step beyond that, kind of just with some of the historical stuff that's swirling around in my head. It's another step to say, okay, now it's possibly anti-Semitic. Because of what happened in Europe in the Middle Ages.
Sure.
So I to be clear, I am not saying that Joe Abercrombie is an anti-Semite.
His first question when Joe Abercrombie comes on the show, are you still an anti-Semite, Joe?
So yeah, it's how long have you been beating your wife?
Yes.
No, and part of the reason I say that is because after The Hobbit was published in 1938, there were people, a while later, after the anti-Semitism died down a bit, people came back and said, by the way, those dwarves, Tolkien, the dwarves, and he was kind of horrified to realize that he had kind of written in some tropes that could be read that way. And so I understand that, even my idol is not free and clear of this sort of thing, but it is something that came to my mind as I was reading this.
Okay,
so
all right,
there you go.
I can see it, especially in the modern era where everybody is so quick to say the World Bank controls everything. So, I could go with you for the first half,
but let me just stop you there and say you said in the modern era, and I would just erase that and say forever.
Sure.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, people have been saying this forever.
Well, I'm only saying the modern era because Joe Abercrombie is still alive and is of the modern era. So, given, how news is crazy these days, he could have said, oh, money is power and money controls everything, without going so far as I didn't see, the step further, but he is British, so.
And it's also so if we look, I know that having said this, this is what people are going to latch onto, and they're going to get on Discord, and they're going to talk about this, the anti-Semitism stuff.
Yep.
And sorry about that. But like I said, we can back off of that and just say the whole thing is very soaked in conspiracy theory. And then we can talk about when this was published in 2008, and what had been going on in the 2000s. As he was likely writing this, because it was published in 2008, but he'd probably been writing it for a few years before that, right? And so we can talk about what had been going on, and
this
it
is
wasn't
a product of its time.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's not
That's what I was
necessarily
saying with
it's
the
not
modern
necessarily anti-Semitic, but it can still be extremely soaked in that conspiracy theory thinking. That there's a cabal that rules the world through money.
At the
you can
same
have
time,
anything in this world
to play
with
defense for Joe Abercrombie, there's always a big bad nebulous network, dark network of something in all of these stories. I mean, the Aes Sedai, or they've got their hands in everything, or the nebulous dark one in Take a Story,
Well, okay.
or this, dark.
He shook his head hard at the start of
I
this
could
episode.
see that.
No, that's
Yes.
It's not an unfair point that you make. I would just push back on that, Ken.
Okay.
You brought up the Wheel of Time.
Only because I saw it on the shelf, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. But pick a story. With the Wheel of Time, at least, you spend a lot of time with the Aes Sedai, and you understand the length, the reach, and the limits of their conspiracy, and you also understand how little control they actually have over world events. Much as they might try otherwise. And so with this one, it's literally one person. This person, Baez, has all the power, all the control, everything
that he's
that's
amassed over
happening in this
1,000
story
years,
is because of his influence and ultimately because of his money. And so that's where it's just conspiracy theory thinking has troubled me a lot over the last 7 years or so.
Yeah, I get it.
A lot. Honestly, longer than that. It's troubled me longer than that. But
money is just another form of superpower. I mean, isn't that what Bruce Wayne taught us? So,
well, anyway. I don't mean to get us hung up on this for the entire rest of the episode, but since it came up,
I think that it works inside of the context of the world and the story.
Yeah,
I think it does. I think one of the things that I don't know how to phrase this because it's not unfairly viewing that, but Baez, we learn that he has been, we're coming to this story after he's been doing this for a long, long time. He talks about, this isn't my first time putting down a rebellion. It's not my first time doing this. He's been doing this for a long time, and how he talks about how his methods and things have had to change. And now he's moving into the era where money is how that works. So I think that I feel like there's enough in Baez's story, things that we're kind of coming into that era. And I will tell you, if you really don't like that thinking here, don't bother with the next trilogy. The thing is,
don't worry.
I know you're not looking at that, which is it's sad because I told you this before off mic. I think your breakdown of the next trilogy would be very, very interesting to hear. But yeah,
would it still?
I still think it would, because it's the concepts and the premises and the premises that I think would be worth hearing about. That being said, I will not ask for that because I do not.
You don't want to sit through it.
I do. Well, I would read the next trilogy again, but I don't think it would be worth.
You don't want to sit through me doing that.
Yeah. So if one day you come out like, all right, here's my 5,000 word essay on why that second trilogy was even a bigger waste of time,
You'll at least read it.
I will read it and
and
subscribe
not
to that and pay
share
for the
it.
Substack or whatever wherever you put that. You put that on your OnlyFans. I'll go subscribe.
That's where I read it naked.
It's all here.
We'll read that with a Post-it note over the screen.
This evolved fast.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's our
Faster than an
specialty.
Abercrombie novel, this one descended.
So should we do some more Discord comments?
Some more Discord comments, characters, something else.
Question. Ken
Yeah.
from Kip10. Do you understand the magic system better now?
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
sorta.
Really?
It's very soft. I mean, but go ahead.
No, that's it. No, you nailed it.
That was it. Okay.
There's nothing to understand.
Yeah, no, it's
something about spirits, the other side,
there-
a seed,
Baez successfully, this was his word, merged all of the magic systems together in his last great moment of dickitude, but
Wow.
yeah,
Nice.
I don't know if that's the word, but I know that he
It's
draws
dickicity.
power. Dickicity. Sure. He draws power from the other side. That's the violation of the first law. And the seed is a conduit.
Ooh. We should talk about the phrase, the first law. Sorry, go on.
Okay. And the second law is where
Don't eat the flesh.
the
of
power of the eaters comes from.
Yep.
There's got to be something to do with the other side from there, too, because I don't understand how just mere cannibalism will give you the power to do, the things that they do. And then there's a third one in there. I don't know exactly what is it, but Baez's
Power of the
girlfriend
Maker.
has it. And
What was it, Ryan?
It's the Baez's power is that he combines the power of the master maker, the skill and the craftsmanship that he understands from there, the magic of Glustrad there, and then is willing to go across the line and break Glustrad's laws to touch the other side, and is able to combine all that through the conduit of the seed. Pharaoh is his connection, his gateway through that, which is why she starts hearing the people whispering about, let us through.
Is he in contact with her? Are they touching when she grabs the seed?
No, she's there.
I
with
don't
him, but
understand how
from
she's
the way
a
I
conduit.
understood it, he
That's-
had the seed and she was next to him, or he was next
She
to her,
has
so he was
demon
able
blood
to.
in her. She has part of her that is
Sure.
from the other side, which allows her to be a little
touch
bit
the
on
seed.
both sides, which is why the seed, she's able to hold the seed.
Which is why she
Baez
only
could
sees in
not.
black and white.
Yeah, that's some things there.
But then Baez is just kind of next to her. So again, this is kind of where so
Think of her
Kipten's question.
like a Terangriel. He's channeling the other side through her.
You know what you got to do with the Terangriel? Touch it. There you go, people. Especially if it's red.
it's a red rod
red and
Terangriel,
cylindrical, shall we say?
All right, so to answer Kip Town's questions, now that I've explained it, I really don't understand it better. Never mind.
There's nothing to understand.
Never mind, I really don't.
So, and I honestly, I don't mind a soft magic system. I'd prefer that it be red and rigid and cylindrical, but
The magic when it's used is pretty cool though. When Baez actually starts using all of it and just obliterates the 100
words.
100 words and and basically kills everyone with radiation poisoning in the city. Like
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that was okay.
That
So
was disappointing.
with that being said, we should move on to like some of the other characters and whatnot. In fact, okay, you know what? No, we've got another 10 minutes to go on this. And so I'm going to go through some of the other Discord comments just kind of chronologically as they came to us. So Jaffu asked us, or he said, and this is a bit of a long one, so hang with me here. Jaffu says, I was kind of expecting grimdark as a genre to feel more grim and dark all the way through. This trilogy was my first taste. So I was surprised when this book felt like it all came down to the wire. It wasn't hard to imagine an alternate ending where Giselle took charge and Logen overcame the berserk in himself, Baez was defeated, Glokta got a taste of his own medicine, etc. I guess I'm just curious if anyone else had a similar experience. Agree or disagree? Any related commentary on this aspect of the trilogy? Yeah.
I did feel like this was less grim and less dark than most grimdark I've read.
How much have you read? I'm curious.
I've read Game of Thrones. I've read Night Angel. I've read a few. I haven't read. I'm not like steeped in grimdark or anything like that.
Right.
But this felt more light, for lack of a better term. Toward the end, everything is still kind of gloomy, but I felt like there was more optimism in the characters at the end of this than I typically feel out of George Martin, for example. I walk away from that and I feel like I just need to hug my kids, you know.
I felt like the grim darkiest character in this story has to be Glocta.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Possibly Logen.
He's the chippy comic relief.
Well, and yet, but with Glocta, we get to the end of the story, and Glocta, he makes decisions. How should I put this? We go through the entire trilogy with Glocta increasingly thinking of himself as, I could be something else. Why have I chosen this life? Why am I chopping this person's fingers off? This is not who I should be or what anybody should be. This is not a good path down life. And then we get to the end of the series, and when the nose meets the grindstone, when the rubber meets the road, he's like, oh, you know what? I need to make things happen. I know. I'll torture it out of this person. I'll do the things that I've not wanted to do, and known that I shouldn't do. I'm just going to do them anyway. And then it works out. Not only does it work out, it works out handsomely for him. That is the grim darkiest thing in the book for me, is that a lot of other characters, they make bad decisions, and sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes good things happen. Mostly bad things happen. With Glocta, it's that reversion to, and I guess you could say this about Logen too. Accepting that you're evil leads to mega rewards now.
I didn't notice it.
That is very, very grimdark to me.
I didn't notice it until you just pointed it. We're talking about that, how very parallel, and probably by design, and I didn't catch it until now, that Glocta and Logan's stories are, in the sense that I'm a bad guy. I think I should be better. I'm still going to do bad things, but I'd still like to be better, even though I'm resigned to the fact that I got to do bad things. They're very similar along that line.
I disagree with a specific part of the Glocta sentiment, in the sense of that he wants to be a better person. Like, that's his driving focus. It's not.
No, I'm not saying it's his driving focus.
There's plenty of times when he looks at, I was once this gorgeous, great fighter, soldier, everything. I could have had this wonderful life here.
Yeah.
I was this, and now I'm reduced to this. And look at my life now. Look at where I'm at now. And it's less of a, I shouldn't be doing these things, and I guess, life would be different if I hadn't been taken by the Gurkish.
As someone who listened to a significant portion of this third book in the last 48 hours, I can tell you there are a few moments where he does have that kind of inner struggle.
I think once he gets to the point with Artie where he's like, there starts to be a realization that that there's something there for him with Artie. Mm-hmm. I see that change, because when he starts taking her through everything, he has a sense of remorse that Artie is seeing the darkest side of him and seeing all these things that he's doing, and he hates that he's having to do this. But I think up to that point, though, it's more of a that it isn't so much I want to be a better person, and more of a I am the person I am because I was made that way in the dungeons of the Gurkish.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
I liked this, by the way. I wanted to point it out that I was worried at first that his relationship with Artie was going to lead her to becoming like his Inquisitor number 2 and stuff, and she was going to take on the life of a Inquisitor man, and stuff.
In a way, I would have liked that better.
Almost, I would have. Well, I don't know if I would have, but I like the fact that her positive light actually draws him to want to be better, rather than the other way around, which is what I feared. So I felt a little bit more hopeful out of that storyline.
Artie makes me really sad.
She is a sad character.
If we're going to talk about, individual characters and where they end up, she makes me very sad in a book like this because I'm trying to think of all the other main or even like upper secondary characters. Of all of them, she has the least agency of anybody in these books. She, more than anybody else, is just carried along by the currents of fate. And they all are to a certain extent. And I think that's part of the point of this series is that, it doesn't matter who you are. It matters when you are and where you are. So I get that. But more than any other character, she's the one who, my brother's fortunes kind of have been rising, and so here I am in the capital. Oh, this noble kid took a shining to me. Oh, okay, all right. So I'll float along with that. Oh, this torturer Galacta is taking a shining to me now. Okay, great. I guess I'll, and so through all 3 books and right up to the end, it's kind of just. Oh, great. All right. Well, life is still happening, so I guess I'll happen right along with it.
She's basically the only boat without a rudder or an oar or a sail. She's just kind of there.
She just kind of goes along. So
she is also, she's also one who doesn't try to fight it, though. Most of everyone else tries to fight it. She doesn't, which is not so much from her perspective and her storyline. I can understand why she wouldn't, but most of our other characters are in some way trying to control their own destiny, and they find out at the end that they really didn't have much control. She's one who actually lets it happen, just says, I can't do anything about it. The closest thing that she comes to taking some sort of agency in her own hand is once she actually thinks for a moment that she and Giselle will be able to be together because Giselle has committed and around through that. But as soon as that falls out, Artie, there's a reason she drinks as much as she does, and it's because she views her life as I don't have control over anything anyway. No one cares about me. No, I am garbage. The sad thing is for me, especially part of the reason why Artie makes me so sad is because I actually know people who view themselves like this, and it hurts me to see that. And
let me ask you this. In the context of this story, is she wrong?
She's not wrong.
That's why I hate these books. There you go. I've said it. I hate these books. There are things I love about them, but ultimately I hate these books because of that exact sentiment. I might as well just drink. And I reject that notion.
Yeah. I completely understand that. I think, let me rephrase my yes. She is correct in the sense that she really doesn't have control, but she doesn't really try to gain control either. I think the part of the frustration is that you look at like a Giselle or you look at Logan or whatever, and these people who are trying to do something, they ultimately don't really have a lot of control over theirs, and you can, I have no problem rejecting the premise that you have no control in your own destiny. I don't believe that myself either. But I think that there is something to be said for those who continue to try to take the next step, if you will, even when it feels like you don't have control there. And that's, I don't want to say this to be down on Artie or that she's a bad character in it, or that if she only just picked herself up by her bootstraps, because that's just really not how that works.
No.
But that's
if
my one critique.
She may be the most emblematic character in the story of what the story is meant to represent. Maybe. Yeah. If Joe Abercrombie wants to come set the record straight, bring it on. I would love to talk to him about this.
He'll be calling.
See that?
He'll be calling.
Well,
yeah, no doubt.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we just need to send him a message just saying, hey, we've now done both yours and Brent Week's books and Brent won. You want to come tell us why we're wrong?
I will say, no, I won't say, because we're not talking about Brent Weeks' books, okay? So let's just say I've got my issues with Brent Weeks' books as well, as much as I love Brent Weeks. And I love that guy. So anyway, let's we have hit the hour mark or very close to it. So I
Full
wanted
series wrap.
Yeah.
We can do a little.
yeah, we can do a little extra.
Got a couple more questions.
Keegan C is new to Discord.
Hey, welcome.
And I'm going to go ahead and call him she, Keegank. Keegank
Keegan's
says, how does Baez compare or contrast with other ancient, wise wizard and sage characters from other series? And are those differences satisfying? Ooh.
Well, he ain't
There's-
no Gandalf.
Oh.
Actually, one of the things that stood out to me, I think it brought me onto one of my rereads, was finishing the first time and reading someone's response saying, how does it feel to have Gandalf be the bad guy? And I was like, wait a minute.
But we already had that.
What do you mean?
Well, let me tell you what I mean.
He
Because
pulls up his notes. Ready to go.
Yeti Beats replies saying similar, but let's see, with Baez, I think Abercrombie was going for the idea that having all that power that wizards do, it would only make sense for them to, if not be evil, then be incredibly self-serving. So when I say we've already had that, I present to you Sauron
the way.
right? So when there's that great line, gosh, now I'm trying to remember if it's in the books. I think it's in the books. But when Gandalf shows back up, Gandalf the White shows up in the Two Towers and he says, I am Saruman. Saruman as he was meant to be. Yeah. And the whole point of that being, yeah, we have this incredible power. And he went one way with it. I'm going another. You know,
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm your like example. I am who you should follow. That's another way in which this is kind of anti-Tolkien is saying, you know, what if there was only ever one wizard and he turned out to be Saruman? Because that's just how the world works. And it's not necessarily.
Well, I mean, yes and no, in the sense of he's not the only wizard. We've been dealing with a lot of other ones, and they all the funny thing is when you look back on it.
What if Gandalf was Radagast and nobody cared and he affected nothing?
But it's you look back at the other ones, like for example, when we're dealing with what is his name? It leads the 100 words.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Khalul. Khalul and his 100 words. Like the other mages, the other magi. He's the first. Now, by the time we finish, Baez is the first and last of the magi. So I think that if you were to take the Saruman piece, it would be like, what if Sauron won or Saruman won, and this is now 1,000 years down the line? What would it look like? This is what the world looks like if Saruman wins. Like, is he still going to be controlling it the same way he did? You know, that's just I think maybe how I view that is that take it down the road 1,000 years, and I think that pairing actually works out. If Joe Abercrombie just says, "What if Saruman won? This is what that wizard would look like down the road."
Right.
That.
In a way. I mean, if you take it in Lord of the Rings terms, no, it's not. But no, but I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Or he just locks his competition in a tower and walks away.
Yeah.
Get dead with your way. I'm like, oh, okay then.
I think that's
that was unsatisfying, by the way.
what was
Just
because I was literally about to say that was one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, it was. The scene was great with Kwai melting into Juven's daughter and everything, and how freaky scary she was and stuff, and that was intense. And then he just he sacrifices Yulwei and locks him in with her, and then they leave. I'm like, that's it. That's what. I don't know. I felt it left me wanting a resolution better than that.
Well, Yeti Beats goes on to mention he asked Joe Abercrombie a question maybe in like a Reddit AMA or something about Baez. Calls Baez one of the most believable villains in contemporary dark fantasy. I don't know about believable, but certainly interesting. I will give you that for sure. But Abercrombie responds by saying, Yeti Beats, what influences inspired this character and his ongoing role in your novels? And Abercrombie responds, mostly Gandalf, though also Merlin and Belgarath and a host of other irascible but goodly wizard mentors throughout fantasy. Baez is their dark reflection, I guess. In the edition of The Lord of the Rings I read often as a kid, there was a foreword by Tolkien where he answered the question of whether the book was an allegory for the world wars by saying if it had been, Gandalf would have used the ring. And I thought right then that would make a very interesting variation. In a world without absolute good, without an unchallengeable divine mission, Gandalf very quickly becomes, that's a key point. We'll come back to that. Gandalf very quickly becomes quite a terrifying figure, a near immortal, enigmatic manipulator without doubt or scruple when it comes to achieving his ends, plus a combination of huge power and a short fuse. He's already a pretty terrifying figure if you're an orc, after all. Which is, yeah. But this is a really, really key phrase if we're going to understand this story as an anti-Lord of the Rings. Or really, at all, really. But when he says, in a world without absolute good, without an unchallengeable divine mission. And that is a difficult question. Is there such a thing in this world, in our lives? And I can't answer that for everybody, but I sure as heck hope that there is. I hope that there is such a thing as good. And that has to be good enough for me for now, while I look for it.
I think that makes sense.
Nothing to add. Yeah,
I'm okay with... I think this is kind of my getting into the judging something for what it is versus what near it thing, in the sense of I'm okay then if he establishes that this world, that there is no divine mandate, that there is no such thing as good in this world, then I'm going to view this only. And maybe that's why for a human being who generally really likes happy endings, likes good versus evil, likes good to triumph, likes this sort of thing.
Always plays as Luke Skywalker in every story.
Right.
This is a very odd series for me to enjoy and attach to because it does not have the key elements that I tend to really appreciate and like. But I don't know if it's just simply because the premise that is set that there really is no overarching divine good or anything like that in there allows me to just let the gray area that they all live in be okay. I don't know. Maybe I need to go have some therapy sessions or have someone break down a little bit more as to
You're darn right.
why do you like this book series? Because it does not jive. This is a little bit out of...
Historically speaking, this is not your jam.
Correct.
However, it is your jam.
It is my jam.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why. Maybe because it's off the beaten path for you.
You know what? This is a good time, Ryan, actually, for some final thoughts. So anything else you want to say about that? And let me preface your final thoughts by saying that one of the things that has frustrated me as we've gone through this series is people getting on Discord or Twitter or wherever and saying, it's a shame you guys don't like this series. When I think what they're saying is it's a shame you, Craig, don't like this series. You do.
I do.
You like this series quite a bit. Is there anything else you want to say on that?
I am careful with who I tried to be careful with who I recommended it to. Because I do understand that this would not be for everybody. And I wouldn't pretend for even a moment that it is. But I do think that it is well worth the read if you are into the high fantasy, into this, if you're listening to this podcast, I think this is a book series that is worth your read for no other reason than to get an idea as to whether or not you appreciate grimdark. So, because I think this is a good entry point for grimdark.
Like if you like this, you like grimdark. If you don't, you might want to back off.
Yeah, if you don't like this series, then go read Brent Weeks. No,
or
no, because like I said, I enjoyed Brent Weeks' works as well. I like Joe Abercrombie stuff, but I think this right now is my recommended entry point. If you are trying to decide if you want to read Game of Thrones and you're not sure if you want to commit to that yet, read this first.
Interesting. Not the other way around.
Not the other way around.
because they were published the other way around.
I think this is because of the amount of dedication it's going to take you to get through Game of Thrones versus the dedication to finish these 3. If you finish these 3 and go, you know what, I enjoyed that experience, then go ahead and go dive into Game of Thrones.
Interesting. Okay.
I can concur with that.
Kenn?
I can get behind that.
Final thoughts.
I did the other one first, and it was a slog getting through the last couple of books of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. So, yeah, I would say that too. This is a more positive Grimdark than I would have expected, I guess. And
what?
I don't really have.
What? Wait, what?
I didn't say it was positive. I just said it was more positive. That's like saying, hey, this toxic sludge isn't as dirty as that, fetid pool. I don't know where I'm going with this.
We're
Super
good at the
fun
metaphors
site.
on the fly.
Yeah.
I'm just really looking forward to when Joe comes on the podcast for an author shelf episode. It's going to be great.
We should
wanna
get
be on
him
that.
and Robin Hobb at the same time. As the 2 authors that we have berated their work the most, we'd like to have you on for a moment.
Again, define we, because
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm the only one I'm throwing under the bus here.
That's okay. I appreciated the, I don't know if it was a Discord comment or the iTunes review or whatever it was. It was like, yeah, they're really not liking it, which is breaking my heart. Except for Ryan. He seems to like it.
He's okay. Except for all the times you've been, what was it? You're homophobic. I was going to say you're racist according to the iTunes reviews, but no, you're homophobic.
I was homophobic.
That's right.
I 100% have said some stupid things on here, usually aiming to make a joke. I've said some transphobic things. I've said I try and learn from them.
No, you haven't.
I have. I can actually go back to the episode I did. I was like, okay, I understood what I said. So I try to learn and be better from when I do that, but it's usually I'm going for a joke and I miss it. So to that iTunes reviewer, screw you. No, I mean...
you know what? There are more jokes there. Ken, do you have any other final thoughts?
I got nothing.
Okay,
I'm pretty much tapped.
So let me just say, I said earlier, I kind of planted my flag. I said I hate this series. Now let me tell you why I would recommend this series. Mm-hmm. And I would. I really would. Kind of like you were saying, Ryan, you got to know who you're recommending it to and when and why and all that stuff. But I hated this series because of who I am and how I want me to be and how I perceive the world. And it kind of flies in the face of a lot of that stuff. And so reading this was like sandpaper to my soul. And it was deeply, deeply uncomfortable, and not in one of those like, oh, it's uncomfortable and it'll make you grow. Not in that way. It was just uncomfortable. However, it's very well written. The characters are good. I can see why, if you are engaged by the relationships, by the dialogue, by the humor with Logen and his many knives and quips, whatever the case may be, Galacta and all that stuff, like there's enough that carried me through where I said this on a previous episode here, but if it hadn't been for the show, I wouldn't have made it past book 1. Mm-hmm. I might not have even finished book 1. But there was enough to carry me through. Even with the show, I could have texted you guys and said, yeah, never mind. That was within my power. I didn't do that because, I was able to make it through the end of the series.
Then we would have carried on without him.
And so if this is a flavor that you do enjoy, there's plenty here to recommend it. And he is a talented author. I just would love to, not even like on the podcast. Joe, you want to go out to dinner sometime? I will frickin' fly to England and we will go to dinner. I want to have an hour-long conversation, just you and me talking about the ideology behind this book, because there is meat on these bones. Mm-hmm. There is plenty here to talk about. I wondered when we started this, like when we did our first episode halfway through the first book, I was like, we're not going to have enough material for 6 episodes. Well, here we are, an hour and 15 minutes into our last episode. There's plenty of meat on these bones. So lots to think about. Great writing, great characters. Well done. I hate it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great.
There you go.
That's a good wrap.
And to everybody else, thank you so much for listening. I hope that's fair. I know that there are Abercrombie fans out there who are not going to be satisfied with that, because there are people who are just, they're not satisfied if we don't love what they, or sorry, if I don't love what you love, then I know you're dissatisfied. And I hope that that I've given you enough context for where I'm coming from, that's okay. That being said, go to thelegendarium.com, something about Patreon, something about GoFundMe. I don't know, whatever. Just go there, check the show notes, whatever. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I'm not exactly sure what's coming up next, but we've got a few things coming down the pike. I've got a lot of author interviews and author shelf episodes that I've been doing lately. Todd did one with me recently that was a lot of fun.
We might be getting Blue Team back together.
Okay. Well, you know what? Don't tease, Ken.
The last
you might as well put on a G-string and some pasties the way you're teasing people right now.
Only on OnlyFans, man.
So there you go. Everybody, thanks for listening. We will see you next time.